Rachel, Jake, and Laura were best friends. They had known each other since childhood and shared countless memories. They decided on a weekend getaway to escape the hustle and bustle of their daily lives. It was a much-needed break. Their destination was a secluded cottage in the woods, far from the noise and chaos of the city. They were excited for a relaxing break from their busy city lives. They craved adventure and the tranquility of nature. Little did they know, a terrifying experience awaited them. The excitement was mixed with a sense of foreboding. The car rumbled along the dusty path. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the landscape. They finally reached the cottage, nestled deep within the forest. It stood alone, shrouded in an unsettling silence. The isolation was both peaceful and unnerving. The old wooden structure looked frail, almost swallowed by the looming trees. It had an air of mystery about it. A shiver ran down Rachel's spine as they unloaded the car. She couldn't shake off the feeling of being watched. The air felt heavy, laden with an unseen presence. It was as if the forest was alive, watching their every move. Jake, ever the optimist, dismissed her worries. He believed it was just their imagination playing tricks on them. He joked about ghost stories and their overactive imaginations trying to lighten the mood. Laura, however, felt it too. She couldn't ignore the strange vibes the place was giving off. An eerie stillness hung in the air. The forest was unnaturally quiet, amplifying their unease. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to happen. The friends couldn't shake off the feeling that they were not alone. The friends stepped into the cottage, their footsteps echoing on the wooden floorboards. The musty smell of dampness and decay hit them immediately, making them wrinkle their noses in disgust. Cobwebs decorated the corners like eerie lace, and dust lay thick on the furniture, untouched for years. It was as if time had stood still in this place. The silence from the woods outside seemed to have seeped inside, amplifying the sense of abandonment. They explored the cottage cautiously, each room revealing more layers of eeriness. Every creak of the floorboards made them jump. The furniture was draped in white sheets, like ghosts frozen in time. Shadows danced in the dim light, filtering through the grimy windows, creating an unsettling atmosphere. Laura discovered an old grandfather clock in the corner of one room. Its pendulum was frozen, as if it had given up on marking the passage of time. Jake, ever the curious one, tried to wind it. To their surprise, the clock sprang to life with a series of clicks and whirs. It chimed, the sound unnaturally loud in the quiet house. Each clang of the bell sent chills down their spines, echoing through the empty rooms. As night fell, they decided to light a fire in the fireplace. The dancing flames cast flickering shadows on the walls, adding to the eerie ambiance. The friends gathered around the fire, sharing stories in an attempt to ignore the growing unease that seemed to permeate the air. But the silence of the cottage was soon broken by creaking sounds. They seemed to come from deep within the walls, as if the house itself was alive and watching them. The friends exchanged anxious glances, their faces illuminated by the flickering candlelight. The unsettling feeling grew stronger, making them question their decision to stay. They noticed an old attic door, slightly ajar, at the end of the hallway. Curiosity and fear battled within them as they approached it, wondering what secrets it held. Later that night, Rachel lay awake. The silence was now filled with strange whispers. They were faint, like the rustling of leaves, but undeniably human. She could have sworn she heard her name being called. She sat up in bed, her heart pounding. The whispers seemed to be coming from the study next door. She cautiously got out of bed and tiptoed towards the study door. Rachel slowly pushed the door open. The room was dark, lit only by a sliver of moonlight. The whispers stopped abruptly. She felt a presence in the room. Her breath caught in her throat. She felt a cold hand on her shoulder. She whipped around. No one was there, but the feeling of being watched intensified. She ran out of the study, slamming the door behind her. The next morning, Rachel told Jake and Laura about the whispers and the cold touch she had felt the previous night. Her voice trembled as she recounted the eerie sensations, making the hair on the back of their necks stand up. Jake tried to rationalize the events, suggesting it might be the wind or an overactive imagination, but even he couldn't shake the feeling that something was deeply wrong. His usually logical mind was clouded with doubt and unease. Driven by a need to understand the source of these disturbances, Laura suggested they explore the attic. She believed that the answers to their questions might be hidden up there, in the dark and forgotten space. They thought it might hold clues about the strange occurrences that had been plaguing them. The attic, with its mysterious aura, seemed like the perfect place to start their investigation. The attic was a dark and dusty space, filled with an eerie silence that seemed to amplify every creak and whisper. Cobwebs hung from the rafters, and the air was thick with the scent of old wood and forgotten memories. It was filled with forgotten relics, each item a silent witness to the passage of time. Old trunks and boxes were stacked haphazardly, their contents long since abandoned and covered in layers of dust. Old furniture covered in sheets loomed in the shadows like ghostly figures. The sheets, once white, were now yellowed with age, adding to the sense of decay and neglect. The air was thick with dust, making it difficult to breathe. Particles floated in the beams of light that pierced through the small, grimy windows, creating an almost magical yet unsettling atmosphere. As they explored, Rachel stumbled upon a loose floorboard. Her curiosity piqued, she pried it open, revealing a hidden compartment beneath. Beneath it, she discovered a wooden box, bound with rusted chains. The box was heavy and cold to the touch, as if it had been waiting for someone to find it for a very long time. Inside the box, they found a leather-bound journal. The cover was worn and cracked, hinting at the many years it had been hidden away. Its pages were yellowed with age, fragile to the touch. Each page seemed to hold a story, a piece of the past waiting to be uncovered. It was filled with frantic scribblings, the handwriting growing more erratic with each entry. The words spoke of fear, confusion, and a desperate need to be heard. The journal belonged to the previous owner of the cottage, a woman named Emily. Her face, captured in a black and white photograph, looked out at them with a haunting expression. Emily's entries spoke of strange occurrences, whispers in the night, and a feeling of being watched. Her words mirrored Rachel's experiences, sending chills down their spines as they realized the connection between past and present. As Rachel read aloud from the diary, the atmosphere in the attic shifted. The air grew heavy and a bone-chilling cold settled upon them. The entries became more disturbing. Emily wrote of a dark entity that haunted the cottage, an entity that could possess souls. Suddenly Jake cried out. He clutched his head in his hands, his eyes widened in terror. He began speaking in a guttural voice unlike his own. He spoke of darkness and rage. He spoke of revenge. Rachel and Laura watched in horror as their friend was taken over by an unseen force. They tried to shake Jake free, but he shoved them aside, his strength unnatural, inhuman. He ran out of the attic, his crazed laughter echoing through the silent cottage. Section 6. The Confrontation. Fear gripped Rachel's heart. She knew they had to help Jake. The journal. It had to hold the key to breaking the entity's hold. Frantically, she skimmed through the pages. She found an inscription, barely legible. It spoke of a ritual, a way to banish the entity. Rachel and Laura gathered the necessary items, candles, salt, and a silver locket found in the attic. They performed the ritual in the living room, their hands shaking, their voices trembling. The cottage groaned in response. Shadows danced more violently. The whispers became screams, deafening, unbearable. Just when they thought the ritual had failed, Jake stumbled back into the room. He collapsed on the floor, his body convulsing. The dark aura around him dissipated. Section 7. The Dark Heart of the Cottage. As Jake lay unconscious, Rachel felt a wave of dizziness. The room spun. The whispers intensified, swirling around her. Images flashed through her mind. A man consumed by grief, a tragic accident, a malevolent force feeding on despair. She understood. The entity wasn't just haunting the cottage, it was the cottage. It was born from a tragedy, fueled by despair. Emily's journal wasn't a record of hauntings, it was a desperate plea for help. Rachel realized they had walked into a trap. The cottage had lured them in, just like it had lured Emily and countless others before them. Section 8. No Escape. Jake finally stirred, his eyes filled with confusion. He remembered nothing of the possession, but Rachel knew they weren't safe. They had to leave, now. But as they rushed towards the front door, they found it bolted shut. They rattled the doorknob, but it wouldn't budge. Panic surged through them. The windows, once breakable glass, were now impenetrable barriers. They were trapped. The whispers morphed into laughter, taunting them, reveling in their fear. The cottage was alive, toying with them. Section 9. Trapped Souls. The temperature plummeted, the shadows danced with renewed vigor. In the flickering candlelight, Rachel saw them. Faint figures, their faces etched with despair, emerged from the shadows. They were the previous victims, their souls bound to the cottage. Rachel understood. The darkest places don't always hide in the shadows. Sometimes they stand in plain sight, disguised as something ordinary, something welcoming. And once you step inside, once they draw you in, there's no escape. The cottage had claimed them, just like it had claimed all those before them. Their laughter, their screams, would become part of the entity's symphony of despair. The haunted cottage had claimed its newest victims.